First up, we have Wildam for ManorX.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is William Softic. I'm from Graz, Austria, and I'm a software developer at ManorX. In my spare time, I'm also contributing to the single-page application framework Aurelia, and by doing so, I do, from time to time, write tests, of course, in Selenium. So what came across my mind is, like, I talked to a lot of people here, and it seems like the issues aren't often with writing the tests or getting them stable in means that we don't know. It's most of the times the very basics, getting the selectors right. And I think a good selector is made upon by two things. So it should be stable on one hand and also robust on the other hand. But the problem is this is a versus, so you can't have both. You should find a sweet spot somewhere in between. So what am I talking about? Well, sometimes I don't know myself here. Stable means we have a selector which guarantees to find one element that you are looking for, no matter what it is. So typically you end up with pretty long selectors, that way a lot of descendants. And if the page is static, it's no problem because it will always work, right? But yeah, sadly we know that web pages are about to change. You get new stuff, you change the design, the order is changed in the DOM tree. So what happens is your pretty solid and perfect selector gets crushed. So you need more robustness. And robustness is best detected by having short selectors. So the shorter the better, also keeping the precedence in mind, like IDs before classes and so on. So to do that, we have to do the trade-off, like something in between, because the best robust selector doesn't help you if it finds the element, but it's not the one you're looking for. That's even creepier. So what we at ManorX are doing is, like, we're trying to solve that issue by creating a free extension. So it's really free, nobody pays anything for that. We're gonna keep it like that way. We want to make it easy to create perfect selectors. And for instance, from my perspective as a software developer for a single page application framework, I know that web components are a really cool thing. So if I think about a selector, it's made of two parts: a good anchor, so that's an element that we know that is for sure granted to stay there, and the path towards the target that you're wanting to inspect. So web components are having custom elements as a basis. And what we figured out is, like, using a custom element as a good anchor is also a good place. So then going on further, you just select your sub part which you're interested in, the button, the paragraph, the whatsoever. So if you guys are interested about learning more about the topic, how to generate cool selectors that are stable but also robust over time, really happy about having a chat conversation with you guys, because I think we can together improve this generation library to make it universally usable for everyone. It's currently a Chrome extension, soon also Mozilla, so we're going to definitely support that. And yeah, thanks for the time talking here. See ya.
Thank you, Wildam. I totally massacred that again, didn't I? Oh, I got that one right? I got 2 right today. I'm on a roll. I'm going to play lottery now. Up next, we have Sneza. Sneza, right? Yeah, I did. Totally butcher it that time. And here you go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sneza, and I am working as a senior tester at Triple. The topic which I am going to talk about is quality is not testing. There is a misconception in most of our companies and most of our working environment where we think that if a product and this application or something is tested, so it's quality ensured. We don't have to do anything else. So because it is tested, so it's a bug proofed. So the only responsibility is put on the shoulder of the testers. But that's not the right thing. I give here example of that when we build a building or something, so we have to prepare the ground, we have to design it. If there is something fall and the building collapse in some day, so we cannot say that it's just because of the builders. Maybe there is a fault in design, maybe there is a fault while using the material which we use for that. But I'm really very much fed up of the thing that when developers and the team and other team members, they say that, okay, if something is false while it was on production, while it is in front of users and it is wrong or it's not working as expected, so it's the fault of a tester. This is the main thing which I wanted to talk about. And The other thing is this, that I will share a short case study, which recently I have done in my own company. When there is something went bad or went wrong, instead of blaming other members, I think so we should gather everyone for a coffee, for a nice time, and we should discuss, okay, where something went wrong. Maybe we will all find a good solution, because at the end, we are working for our company and we are team members. So our cause is the same. So I think so. This is something. And yeah, I am done before time. So thank you so much.
Okay, she wasn't joking. That was a lightning talk. It's called redundancy, right? Up next we have Pradip, which did I get that one right? Mostly, yeah, I figured. It was about time for me to crash and burn on that. Here you go. Take it away.
Can I click the slide next? Hello, so I'm Pradeep from Autodesk, and I won't be talking about our framework, which is called Chameleon. It's a multilingual automation framework for our web and cloud applications, as well as for the documentations. So I work in localization, and in Autodesk, we localize all of our products into different localized languages, and not only the products, but the web marketing content, as well as the documentation part. So that's where we needed this framework, which is internationalized enough, which can detect internationalized bugs like date culture format, check the globalization stuff like the Unicode, corrupted characters on the given web page, web applications, and so on. So that's where we first check the open source frameworks, tools available in the market, but we couldn't find the one which meets, could meet our requirements. So we started exploring, and last year we put up this new framework called Chameleon. So it's the four main features, which I'll say the important one is the pluggable. Is easy to manage different applications type using adapter-based mechanism. So what is adapter is, it's product agnostic, since we have got so many different kinds of applications, right, from the documentations to web applications, as well as the different content. So based on that, you can just change the adapter in the input settings, and you can run any application. It's product agnostic. Then it's reusable. You just write once all the test cases logic, which can find the internationalized bugs, and then you can run it against all products. You need not to write a separate product-specific scripts at all. It can run on any available localized language. It's globalized enough, and it's very flexible. You can add multiple test case types, like if you want to do a functional or other UI layout related checks, it can be easily done. So I'll just. So this is just I discussed to find out different kind of issues. So this is just a high-level architecture that, as I mentioned, user can give input in the form of JSON or CSV, whatever, and then based on different adapters, it will choose. It will run some plugs, which is script agnostic, and then it will run those test cases to find the UI bugs, and it will give an output in different result formats, whatever you need. You can track those results. You can. We have connected it to Jira so that bugs can be automatically verified as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Pradeep. Did I get it right? No, still no. Oh, I did? Eventually I'll get it right. Up next we have Toshiya talking about machine learning to UI tests as a lightning talk. I'm intrigued. I am very intrigued. Have fun with this. Yeah, it should be fine.
Hi. Okay. Yeah, my name is Toshiya, and my company is called DNA. DNA is one of the leading mobile game company in Japan. And anyway, we have developed a lot of end-to-end test cases for past 5 years. And for now, we truly understand that UI tests are not easy. So today's my talk is about this question. Machine learning is now getting more and more popular in all industries. Then what happens if we apply it to UI tests? Of course, I cannot handle all the problems at once, so let me focus on one simple problem. That is detecting and identifying and filling text forms. Fortunately, there is an interesting previous work shown in this slide about these problems. So now we are trying to realize this technique in our practical situations. So let me explain how it works. Of course, we use machine learning. First of all, we have to collect training data from internet. Then, using this training data, we train the machine learning model by some learning algorithms. So with this trained model, we can automate filling in text forms. So think in an example. So there are 2 text forms in your website, and form A is about email address, and form B is about first name. Then these text forms has this kind of HTML. Then the previous trained model receives these HTML strings and analyze them and find the patterns, then output appropriate topic for each text form, like this. If the model can infer text form topic correctly, then we can fill the appropriate text data into each forms. So here, the point is all the details of test implementation are hidden in a machine learning model. That's fantastic. Now we have implemented this technique in a prototype system and available on GitHub. The prototype is very experimental stages, but the result of inference accuracy is very promising. We could identify 85% of text forms in our situations. So, in summary, machine learning seems to be very promising in UI test fields, so let's try machine learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Toshiya. I was surprised you actually pulled it off in 3 minutes. I know my presentation went fast. I don't think it was that fast, though. I'm impressed. Up next, we have Greg talking about something that I have a lot of experience with web testing on iOS and UC browsers, which it's going to be interesting. There you go. Take it away.
All right. Hi, my name is Greg Dennis. I'm a software engineer at Google, and I'm going to talk to you about a framework I built called DevTools Driver. So a couple of years ago, I started to use an open source tool called iOS Driver. It's an open source web driver implementation for mobile Safari on iOS. And like a lot of open source projects, I found that it kind of worked and it kind of didn't work. It didn't quite offer the stability and features we needed to do web testing on iOS at scale. So like any good user of an open source project, I started to submit pull requests, became a committer, and was part of a community to help make it better. But around that time, soon after that, iOS Driver sort of fell out of maintenance. The lead developer stopped working on it, and I also ran up against some fundamental roadblocks in its design that prevented me from iterating at the velocity I wanted to. So I said, what the hell? I'm going to fork it internally and rewrite large portions of it until we had something that was working. Okay, that's the first part of this story. The second part of this story is around the same time, people at Google started to ask me about UC Browser. What are we doing to test on UC Browser? And I think I answered, what the hell is UC Browser? So it turns out it's a very popular browser in emerging markets around the world. It's the #1 mobile browser in India with 44% market share, #2 in China and Indonesia. And those are big countries, so that's a lot of people. And hey, we're not testing our websites for them, and that makes us sad. So what do we do about it? Well, we had a couple insights. The first was that, well, UC Browser is based on WebKit, just like mobile Safari is. And hey, iOS driver drives mobile Safari using something called the DevTools Developer Tools Remote Debugging Protocol, which is common to any browser based on WebKit. So in fact, a large portion of what iOS driver is doing is directly transferable to a driver for UC Browser as well. So we factored out those common bits into a framework we call DevTools Driver, the principle being that if you give us a way to start the browser and connect to the DevTools port and a way to shut it down, the framework gives you a pretty good WebDriver implementation in return. And we've open sourced this framework here, and so I encourage you to use it. Thank you.
Has anyone ever worked with a driver before? They're so much fun. I'm surprised Simon raised his hand. Thoroughly shocked by that. That is news to me. Mind blown. Up next, we have Steve talking about something I'm quite intrigued by, which is using WebDriver to write your tests. We're going to see how this goes. Take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. Yes, it may seem a little weird. I'll try and take you on the journey that I followed. So I'm Steve Meller. I'm a senior software test engineer, and this is the journey I had. So this will probably be familiar to everybody. You've got the DevTools open. You're trying to find the element. It's for the search box for Google, so it's actually Q. It's pretty straightforward. And then you just go and write your test, probably be fine. Other elements, not so easy to find. This is just an image of Amazon's page. You can see there's no link text, there's no name, there's no ID. So you might spend a couple of minutes and eventually figure out, hey, I could probably use the alt tag or the source tag. But you might not be familiar with you might not be familiar with the syntax. Syntax for that would actually work would be that. It's not exactly memorable, especially if you're not writing that kind of thing all the time. So I thought, okay, there's got to be a better way of doing this. The current process being open up the element inspector, identify an element by its attributes, find a good locator that actually works, test it to see if it actually does hit your element, and then fix any problems. Like say if it was down a frame, you'd have to navigate to the frame first. So I had quite a lot of problems with this kind of stuff, so it just got me thinking a little bit laterally. Turns out that you can actually interrogate all the elements on a page from WebDriver using this unholy little bit of code. It basically just asks for all the forms from form 0 in the document to be sent back to you as an element, and then you can iterate over that and get out all the attributes, all the ones that are useful, which would return this, and then there's our element Q. Which on the face of it isn't very useful, but you could run that and just have a list to look at by the side. Probably not much more usable than the actual DevTools though. Another problem I had was when you get an element, you may be addressing it incorrectly. You may have picked a locator that actually happens to capture more than one. And this little bit of code here would try and find a unique instance of an element. Obviously there'd be a lot more code here, but this is just for finding it by a name, and if it only returns one element, then you know that you've got a good selector. It will only return that element. And here's a way, well, a little rule of thumb, this little table that I use, just things you can actually use to uniquely find an element. So bringing it all together, I want to find all the usable elements, extract useful attributes, present them in a list, try to show whereabouts on the page the element is, allow it to be interacted with, generate some reusable code, because otherwise what's the point, and there it is. I wrote a little tool to do that. The left side has all your elements, the right side is the actual generated Java code, and then there's a little box at the bottom that gives you some standard error and standard out output. It's on GitHub, have a look. I'd love some comments, because it's a one-man tool for me. If anyone wants to take a look, I'd be brilliant if you could give me some feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Up next, we have Oliver presenting, writing something we're all trying to strive for is maintainable and readable UI tests.
Hello, I'm Oliver Libutzky, and I'd like to talk about writing stable and maintainable UI regression tests. So, oh, my slides went away. Okay. Okay. The key challenges beside performance and speed when doing regression testing is maintainability and stability. And how to tackle those challenges. My advice is not to reinvent the wheel. As I am a software developer, I know a lot of learnings we did in software engineering, and I advise you to adapt them for your testing framework. So there are things like clean code, modularization, dependency injection, abstraction, or domain-specific API. So rely on these learnings. Just to get into an example, think about your domain. In this example, we have the SeleniumConf website, which is the page, and then we have components, and in there are nested components which reflect the whole schedule and a single talk of the conference. And now structure your testing code like this domain. So this leads to very readable code in the end. So this might be our test code. As you can see, we auto-wire the SeleniumConf website. So we use a Spring, which is widely spread in the enterprise world, not so widely spread in the testing world, I think. So we inject this page object, and now we can browse within the path. So we can access the schedule, and we can select a single talk by using a certain predicate. In this example, we select the time. And we can assert that the keynote speaker is Simon Stewart. I guess you agree that this is very readable, it's very maintainable, as it just reflects what the test actually does. And it's very easy to write this, as you have some statically typed language. You can do type checks, and yeah, it's all in the place. So the IDE and the compiler might help you. Another cool thing about this is that each query is executed lazily. So it's not in the moment where you say select single talks executed, but it's executed whenever you perform an action. So therefore it's easily possible to requery those elements internally. And therefore it's very stable and reliable. So you won't get any stale element exception anymore. Yeah, if you want to know more about this, these are my contact details. You can contact me via Twitter or email. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Up next, we have Usman with a cleverly titled lightning talk titled Untitled.
Hello. I'm Usman from BlaBlaCar. Yes, that is the real name of the company. I'm going to speak really quickly, so sorry to the stenos. So it's called Untitled, yes. Reasons why a work of art would be called Untitled. Let's say maybe history. Before the 18th century, no one put titles on their art. Or maybe, I don't know, the creator is a perfectionist and is cursed by crippling indecision, usually in the face of a deadline. Or maybe they're just pretentious. But let's think actually about a micro anecdote about how at BlaBlaCar we created an end-to-end mobile test automation framework. We wanted to write tests once that could be run on both Android and iOS apps that we develop. So we were really excited. We built it. We wanted to make sure we can write tests once that can run anywhere. Check. We wanted to make sure that it had a fluid interface that was easy to read and easy to write, so anyone in our team could write tests. Check. We wanted to document all of the things. Documentation is very important. If you saw Kim's talk earlier, we documented everything. We had so much documentation. And we wanted a really awesome name, and of course, we named it, that's me, we named it Qualcium, which is, that's the best name like I've ever heard for anything. Let's see, but but you know, we had a long list of ideas and assumptions about what we wanted to build and how we should build it, and we had a lot of feedback from each other, but not that much feedback or regular feedback from our stakeholders. So really there was low usage in the end by our largest stakeholders. So usage right now is increasing steadily due to new efforts, but contrasted with more recent nameless framework that we created from scratch with our stakeholders fully integrated at the very beginning, and we applied our learnings from Qualcium. We tried some new things, built it in a fraction of the time, reusing some of the stuff we've already built for Qualcium, and it's great, it works perfectly. So test automation, okay. You might just want to jump in and say, test all the things. I mean, it's on your t-shirt. But first, you got to remember to ask all the questions. Really, who are your stakeholders? Who owns the tests? What are the primary use cases? Who owns the framework? Technical questions, what languages and technologies do you want to use? Where does the code live? Where do the tests live? Benjamin's talk earlier and Richard's talk before on flaky tests had a great list of other questions. I could have come up with a more perfect title, but you know, done is better than perfect, right? Worse is better. Perfect is the enemy of good. Done is worse than the enemy of good. What I'm trying to say is don't spend all your time trying to build the perfect automation solution you want to build. Spend most of your time thinking of good questions to ask about the framework before it's built, and there are always more questions than you think. And then answer the questions, be sure about most of them, realize you're wrong, iterate. One iteration is one done point. Get continuous feedback from each implementation. Try to balance expectations, priorities, resources, and reality. Build something imperfect and unveil it to the world. Then move it in the direction of perfect. That is, move it in the direction of the ever-changing demands of the world around you. Evolve your solution. You might not even need to name it.
Thank you very much, Usman. Up next, we have Tatiana talking about her experience with SOAP UI.
Hello. I don't have any slides, and I just want to tell you about my experience with some kind of visual programming with usage of SOAP UI, and also there is another similar tool, Ready API, also written by SmartBeer. And so in my previous company, I had a task to automate some API, but it was REST API. And because I already know SOAP UI, I use it in my previous company and a little bit, and I decided to, and I wasn't able to write any ready-made production-ready code, so I decided just to use this SOAP UI tool. And for the beginning, everything was okay, and my team was happy because the speed was very nice. And but after some months, half a year, I realized that all my time, most of my time, I spent in maintaining this test. And we had some refactoring, we had some resource regrouping in API, some changes, and with SOAP UI, and not only with SOAP UI, but with any other tools like this, when you don't have code and you have some kind of visual stuff, probably ManorX and Test Complete, also the same. Selenium IDE is the same kind of products, just with visual programming tools. If you have some refactoring and you have to update some small thing, in, for example, 10 test cases, you will have a lot of pain. And if you need to run such kind of test in CI server, for example, you will have another pain because probably it will work only with Windows, for example, not Linux. And another problem, probably you will need to buy additional license, another problem, and you can customize it and such kind of stuff. But for the really beginners, for manual testers, I can say it's a wrong way. It helped me to understand how it should be. What I have to create some separate classes for asserts, for example, because in SAP UI there are special list of asserts, and you can choose. And it could help you to understand the nice structure of your future test framework, but please be ready to write a code in nearest future and to learn how to do it. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana.